Yeah, we are on slide mode.
Are we in slideshow mode or
Yes, we are on slideshow mode. You want me to say something first and then I will start let me know when you want your first slide.
that is the first slide.
Oh, I mean the second one next to this.
Do
Oh,
you want
okay.
to,
Can I
Elena,
go
you
ahead
said
and
you wanted to
welcome?
have an introductory view.
Okay. I just want to welcome everybody to our Bylaws Forum. My name is Elena De Jesus. I'm the PNAA Bylaws Committee Chair, and I'm so proud and honored to introduce to you Attorney Leticia Hermosa, who is our 18th PNAA president. She had served this organization in various ways, especially with regards to legal counsel. And of late, she has been very active with Camp Aruga and has been very, very beneficial to the learning of all the different laws that govern our organization and most especially our chapters. Um, there had some questions that arose that we could not really cover in the Camp Aruga setting. So I am, on behalf of the Bylaws Committee, so honored to present to you a question and answer forum with a little, important introductory information from Attorney Hermosa. I am joined today by my committee, especially with my liaison officer to the executive board, Jay La Rosa. I saw him there. I saw him in the crowd. I have the rest of my members will be coming in and will be helping us with the chat room and some of the facilitation of the questions. Um, so without further ado, I would like to present to you Attorney Leticia Hermosa.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you? Okay. Thank you, Elena De Jesus, Chairman of the Bylaws Committee. I just wanted to thank you and your Bylaws Committee for hosting and sponsoring this forum. I know there are a lot of questions about 501c3 and all those areas. So the focus that we have today will be focused on tax exempt determinations. Next slide. Next slide, please. Elena, next slide.
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh, hold on a minute.
Put it on slideshow.
Yeah, it's on the slideshow now.
Okay, so this is a disclaimer. This is for education and informational purposes. So this is not intended as legal advice. Okay, so if there are legal issues, it has to be dealt with on a one-to-one basis. Next slide. So I wanted to start as an overview and as an introductory statement. I know that some of you who have attended our previous forum and who have attended Camp Aruga, I always share this so that we all know the kinds of resources and the levels of authority that we need to.
We have been Zoom bombed again.
Can you delete that?
Carol, that was the same one that came.
Are they deleted now?
I deleted it, but
Yeah, I removed him
okay.
too.
Okay. So I'm unfortunately, with online presentations and webinars, there are always people who try to enter. So hopefully those people who are in attendance today are here in good faith. We're all sharing information and we wanted to educate the attendees, but not to disrupt the forum. So going back to the slide, these are the levels of authority that we use in order to make decisions. And when I introduced this slide, I always talk about making informed decisions. So when you are making decisions, these are the authority that you need to use, and there are levels. As you know, the United States Constitution is the highest level and the supreme law of the land. It's followed by federal state law, and this is the focus of our discussion today. Articles of incorporation are the next in line in the level of authority. Organization bylaws, which is the focus of the bylaws committee. We had a very nice webinar last time about bylaws, so we will more concentrate on federal and state laws today. Then we have the parliamentary rules that are used for meetings. Policies and procedures are the next in line, and custom. So whenever you're making decisions, you need to make sure that you're following the hierarchy of authority so that you make the right decisions at the right level. You can ask questions on this one later on because we will have ample time for questions and answers at the end of the presentation. You have to excuse me because I'm recovering from bronchitis, so I might cough on and off, but I'll be fine. Next slide, please. So this is one of the major discussions that we will have. We will talk about how the federal and state laws intersect. And when we talk about tax exempt status, there's really a very pure intersection between federal and state government. So when we talk about this topic, they have to work together between the federal and state law. The same thing with the incorporation and other reporting requirements.
I'm
So
sorry.
go ahead. That's all right. Next slide. No, next slide, Ellen.
Okay.
Next one. So this is the focus of our presentation and our discussion today. We talked about the basic principles of authority, which I just talked about earlier. And then we'll focus on tax exemption. What does tax exempt mean? 501c organizations, 501c3 and 501c6, the purpose, limits, and prohibitions. How to apply for tax exempt, maintaining a tax exempt designation, and if your tax exempt revocation has received from IRS, what to do next. And then we talk about lesson learned and the Q&A. Hopefully, we'll have time, a lot of time, to answer questions and answers that relate to tax exemptions. Okay, so next slide, please. So what is tax exempt? It is really allowing organizations to pay federal income tax. As you know, if you file your taxes, you have to pay federal income tax depending on your income. So for when you're tax exempt status, you are qualified not to be taxed by the federal government. So what you have are the amount of money that you have without paying federal taxes, and that's what it means by tax exempt status. You should differentiate it from tax tax exemption and tax deduction. It's different. Tax exemption is that you just are not paying federal income tax. Now, when you are tax exempt from the federal income tax, that doesn't mean that you are exempt from your state tax, because there are two departments of revenue. One is federal and one is state. So the exemption is just relating to your federal income tax, but not your state income taxes. So it typically applies for nonprofit organizations, charities, and educational institutions. So what this means is that if your organization is exempt from taxes, you have more funds for your mission. You have more money to spend for your own mission. And the donations and expenses towards tax exempt are often tax deductible. So that's what I mean when I say tax exemption is different from the concept of tax deductible. Tax deduction is on the side of the donors. The donors can deduct their donations as deductible from their income. Next slide, please, Ellen. So there are several types of 501c organizations. And this is just a code that's used by ROS that confers tax status to nonprofit organization. And it specifically identifies the nonprofit organizations that are exempt from paying income tax. So there are, next slide. Next. So there are actually 27 different types of 501c. So when you receive communications in your chapters, when you say 501c, there are really 27 types of 501c designations. And they're numbered from 1 to 27. So this is just the most common types of 501c organizations. So they are numbered from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until 27. So for example, 501c1 is for organizations that are created by act of Congress. And C2, corporations held titled property of exempt organizations. 501c3 are corporations or foundations that operate for religious, charitable, scientific, literary, and educational purposes. And this is where most of our chapters are exempt, 501c3. So you always hear 501c3s for nonprofit charity organizations. Then goes to 504, 505, 506. And then here's the most common one in our chapters, 501c6, is for business leagues, chambers of commerce, and trade associations. And this is so for example, we have medical associations and nursing organizations. They're considered business leagues and so on. So we will concentrate our discussion on 501c3 and 501c6 because that's where most of our chapter are have received their exemptions. And we will discuss the differences between these two in more detail. Next slide. Okay, yeah, here are the major differences between a 501c3 and 501c6. So for those of you who are still forming your organizations and who are still filing, you need to know what your purpose is. So if you wanted to apply as a 501c3, these are charitable organizations organized and operated for purposes that are beneficial to the public. So it's really for public charity. It's supported by contributions and grants. It's classified as public charity or private foundation. And there are two different subcategories of 501c3. One is public charity and foundation. Then we have contributions are tax deductible as a charitable contribution from the donors. For 501c6, these are association of persons with common business interest, the purpose of which is to promote the common interest of those individuals. Examples are medical and nursing associations. So if you see the Philippine Medical Association, Philippine Nurse Association, all the other associations, they are considered 501c6. So it's really for the benefit of the common interest of the members versus for 501c3 is for the benefit of the public. So you see those distinctions on the interest of people that they are interested in. 501c6 mostly supported by membership dues. Contributions are not deductible as charitable contributions, but some contributions may be deductible as business expense. And these are two differences. For charitable contributions, when they file their tax return, there's a category in the tax form that says charitable contributions. And the same thing if they're filing for 501c6, there's a section there that says business expense. And those are things that expenses for continuing education programs, uniforms, those kinds of things are considered business expenses. Travel, those are considered business expense for a professional organization. And one main difference between these two tax exempts is that 501c6 may influence legislation. They could do lobbying. So one of the things that most professional organizations do is to lobby for the interest of the profession. Whereas in the 501c3, they cannot lobby because they're supposed to be neutral. They're supposed to be formed for the benefit of the public. Next slide. So there are prohibitions between those two types of tax exemption. For charitable organization, private benefit or inurement is prohibited. Political campaigning, intervention on behalf of a candidate, lobbying is restricted, and self-dealing between private foundation. And one example of this is that, say, for example, a donor wanted to donate to an educational institution, and they said, okay, I will donate $1 million, and with the condition that I'll have my children be accepted in the school. Well, that's self-dealing. And another example is, for example, a donor wanted to contribute to a scholarship fund. Okay, I'll donate 500,000 for your scholarship fund, but I'd like to have access to the scholars. And these are in terms of the recruitment agencies who may want to access the graduates of the scholar. So those are all private dealings. So you have to be very careful when you are accepting donors from different people, so that make sure that the intent is really not for self-dealing. Of course, for 501(c)(6, prohibition is that no private benefit and engagement in substantial business activity or profit. Sometimes, we're carried away with a lot of fundraising. Make sure that your fundraising does not overpower your main benefit. You could do fundraising, but to the extent that it is for the mission of your organization. And we could discuss this later on for specific examples. You have examples in your chapters that you're not sure whether they're business activity or not, then we could discuss those, because there are different ways of fundraising. Okay, next slide, Len. So while I'm sharing you this basic information, write down your questions, because we will be having a dialogue at the end of the presentation to see what questions you have, and we could clarify those. So one of the things that you need to understand for tax exempt status, that the state law governs the nonprofit status. So many of the nonprofit organizations are called nonprofit because they are governed by state law. So when you are in a state, you need to apply for your nonprofit status to the state. You file a form, you file an application, and your legal document will be your article of incorporation. That is governed by the state, whereas the federal law governs tax exempt status. And the tax exemption is really for tax exemption from income taxes. So, like I said, before applying for tax exempt status, you need to know what your purpose is, and that is applied for the articles of incorporation. And the federal law, federal, would look at your articles of incorporation to see what your purpose is, and that's how they determine your tax exempt. So before you apply, you have to gather your organization documents. That includes your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, and your financial documents. So when you are applying, you actually need to know what your state's registration requirements are. If you go to your website, and if you go to the application, I've indicated it here. You go to your state registration requirements, and let me see if I could click this. No, I cannot do it. Okay, so to determine your state registration, you have to go to your state website, and it will tell you the documents that you need in order to be registered as tax exempt. And in some states, they will require a certificate of donation or certificate of fundraising. In some states, they just rely on the federal documents. So you make sure that you need to know your state's requirements are for fundraising, because there are some specific requirements. For example, like say in state of Massachusetts, we are required to have a certificate of fundraising or certificate of document to allow you to fundraise. Because when you are registered in the state department are responsible for monitoring your fundraising and monitoring your activities as a legal entity. And of course, obtaining your federal income tax, you would need this. And you can actually very easily from the website on how to apply for your identification. Next slide. So, your articles of incorporation and organization bylaws are requirements for you to file your tax exempt status. And they will actually require, if you don't have your articles of incorporation, maybe you have a comparable a document that identifies you as a legal entity. It should have your name of incorporation, your purpose, your incorporators, your principal place of business, officers, directors, and addresses. And they need to have all this so that when they send information or communication to your entity, they have specific names and addresses to send their mails, their emails, or whatever communication they need to have. And your articles is really your document that identifies you as a legal entity. If you don't have articles of incorporation, that means that you're not operating as a legal entity in your own state, which means that you're not legally entitled to do fundraising or collect donations and all those requirements for an incorporated incorporation of incorporated organization. Now, there are some organizations that do not require articles of incorporations if they don't need to be tax exempt, because there are some organizations that are automatically tax exempt, like churches and schools. They are tax exempt. So you need to make sure that when you are starting your chapter, you need to register to the state where you are residing, and you will have your articles of incorporation, because the IRS will require your articles of incorporation before you file for tax exemption, and that's one of the ways that there is a relationship between the state and the federal. The federal government will require your articles of incorporation, and your state will require your tax exempt before they accept you in your state. Of course, they need your organization's bylaws, where you have your names of your corporation, board of directors. In some cases, they use the term executive board. So if you have board of directors or executive board, they need your bylaws, organization structure, meetings, amendments. So your organization bylaws is really the operational document that you need to do to run your organization. Next slide. So this is the application process when you apply for tax exemption to the IRS. Like I said, gather your documents first before you apply, because they need all of those documents. Your articles and bylaws, they need those. Gather your financial information. They need to know, the IRS need to know where you're getting your income, how you want to spend your income, and your expenses for the entire year, projected expenses, and where is your income coming from. Then you complete Form 1023. So if you are applying as a 501c3, because you know that your purpose is for as a charitable organization, you use Form 1023, and that's for 501c3 organizations. If you are applying as a 501c6, then you use Form 1024. Now, the 1023 form is really more lengthy, because they really want to know what your sources of incomes are and how do you want to disperse them, your operations, how you function. Are you really functioning as a charitable organization, or are you functioning something else? And so then when you have all of those information, then you can file for Form 1023. Now, these are all online. Now, there were times when you need to submit this by paper. You could mail them, and you mail the supporting documents by mail. But because of the Paper Reduction Act of the federal government, they now require applications to be online. Okay, so now you're ready to file to the IRS. Next slide. So how to file? Like I said, as of 2020, the IRS requires Form 23 and on 1024 application for recognition to to apply online, and you could click the pay.gov, and that will give you directly to the form that you would like to have. So you need to register an account to pay.gov, enter 1023 in search box or 1024, whatever applies, then complete the form. Now, I must tell you that I wanted to emphasize that make sure that you have all of your documents ready before you even file, because there are so many documents that they require. And if you don't, then they will just reject your application. So file online. Um, you go to pay.gov and establish an account, and they will have you select which form you wanted to apply for. Next slide. So this is how the Form 1023 looks like. It is a lot of pages. I just had a copy of 1023, and there are different schedules that you need to have depending on your situation. So this is the form, and it will tell you right on. Can I use my arrow? There you go. It will tell you right there. 1023 is filed electronically only at pay.gov. They will not accept your paper application. They will just ask you to go to pay.gov and file your application. So go to www.irs.gov 1023 for final information. And they have a site that tells you all the directions on how to file your form. They have directions on what to every item gives you the direction how to file it. So this is available online, and you could file it very easily on pay.gov. Next slide. So when to file? Now this is something that not many organizations know. Generally, if you file 1023 within 27 months after the end of the month in which you are legally formed. So as soon as you are formed as an organization, you have 27 months to apply for your tax exemption. If you apply after 27 months, you'll have to file more documents. That's why I have those different schedule in 1023, depending on when you file your exemption. So the lesson learned on this one is as soon as you form your organization, you have your articles of incorporation, you have your bylaws and your documents, you file for your tax exemption right away. Don't wait for 27 months, because the longer you wait, the more documents you will be required. So you file your 1023 within 27 months, and if you file your application within 27 months, the effective date of your exempt status is the date when you file your 1023. Or if you file within 27 months, I wanted to make clear on this one. If you file within 27 months of forming as an organization, the effective date is the legal date of your formation. So let's say, for example, you were formed on January 15, 2025, and you filed within 27 months, your effective date of tax exemption is January 2025. You don't have to wait. But if you wait after 27 months, then the effective date of your exempt status will be when you file your 1023. So the earlier that you file your 1023, the earlier you will get your tax exempt status, provided that you have all the documents that are necessary. Now, I didn't know this, so I haven't been emphasizing this, but I just wanted to emphasize, if you want to have your tax exemption ready as soon as you were formed. Now, this is very critical. Like, say, for example, you're waiting for a grant or waiting for some donors to give you a donation. You need to file right away, so that at least you'll be legally able to have donations, and you'll be identified as a tax exempt. They have a list of organizations that are tax exempt on the IRS website. So if you are waiting to have donors, or you want to have a fundraising right away, then you need to file your Form 1023 right away as soon as you are formed. After that, after 1025, and after 27 months, then you'll have to have a schedule, different schedules to form in addition to your Form 1023. I know you'll have questions on these later on, but we could go to those questions as you learn these the basic elements. Next slide, Lena. So when you are accepted for your tax exempt, you will receive a tax exempt determination letter, and they're all standard. So you notice that on the right side, can you see my arrow? So when you see, when you don't ignore this, because this gives you a lot of information. So when you see when you see your tax exempt determination letter, make sure that they have your ID employee number correctly, because sometimes they could make a mistake, and you could have a different employer identification number. So you check those, then you have your ID number and all those. But one of the things that I want to point out is this. It says public charity status. Now, so I have received some calls about chapters who have received their tax exempt determination letter, and they said, Attorney Hermosa, they said that our charity status is 50982. Is that an error? No, it's not an error, because if you are applying for a 501c3, um, can you defer your questions? I cannot see those at the same time. So those who are monitoring the chat, please list those down. We'll address those in a few minutes. If you receive your tax exempt determination letter, pay attention to this. If you have 509A2, that means that you were classified as a charitable organization. Remember, I mentioned earlier that if you are a 501c3, you'll either be a charitable organization or a foundation. Those are still 501c3, but there are two categories, subcategories. 509A2 is a charitable organization, and 509A3 could be a foundation. So here, in the body of your letter, they have they would identify that you are a 509. I think they have it. I think I cut it. Well, anyway, you're classified as a charitable if you have a 509 two organization. The other thing, oh, here it is. So here it says organizations accepted under 501c3 are further classified as either public charity or private foundation. We have determined that your public charity under IR and under the section is a 5 of a charity, and that's what it means. If you were a foundation, so when you're applying, make sure that you know whether you're applying as a foundation or a public charity. There's some chapters who are applying as a foundation, which is fine, but you need to know what you're applying for. There are two distinctions. Now here, at the bottom, it also says 990EZ or 990. This is your annual. I'm seeing chats again. This is a here we go. I'm being distracted by the chat messages. So when you apply for your tax determination, they will require you to apply as for a 990 annual report. 990 annual report is sent to the IRS once a year, every year. So even if you have not received your tax exempt determination letter, you are already you're already required to file your 990. And here it will tell you, it says Form 990, 990EZ, or 99 and required. This is a requirement, and it really depends on your annual revenue in your organization. Now, if you have more than 50,000 of your annual revenue, you file 990. If you are below 50,000, it's a simple form, 990EZ, and if you are below those numbers, then you file 99 and 99N. So it really depends on how much revenue you have at the end of your fiscal year. Next slide. So here again, to maintain your tax exempt status, and this is very, I cannot emphasize this well enough. You have to file your Form 990 and maintain financial records. Because every year they would like to require you to report your financial report, and you have to adhere to mission and purpose, restrictions of political activities and business entities, which I have mentioned earlier. So I have this in red. If you don't file the required form for 3 consecutive years, your tax exempt status will be automatically revoked. Don't be surprised if you get this letter. And I wanted to emphasize this because some of your chapters change administrations, and sometimes some chapters are surprised that they received this and they didn't know that they were supposed to. Well, what happened is that the previous administration did not file their Form 990 for 3 years. And all of a sudden, they got this notice from the IRS that they no longer have a tax exempt. So make sure that when you're transitioning from administration to administration, that your 990 are sent every year. Now, if you missed 1 year, just file the year that's missing. At least you know that your chapter exemption will not be revoked. Because the rule is that if you don't file it for 3 consecutive years, it's automatically revoked. And your name will be listed as a non-exempt organization, which means that you can no longer accept donors that will be tax deductible, and you will be taxed with your actual revenue, but including the income taxes. So that's very, very I want to be clear on this because we have chapters that have their tax exempt revoked, and you'll have to do a lot more work when your tax exempt is revoked. So don't allow it to be revoked. Next slide. So here's that I was mentioned to you earlier. When you file your annual 990 tax reform, you have a short form, and here I emphasize, here it says, if your gross receipt is 200 or more, so it says here 200,000. Determine gross receipt. If gross receipt is 200,000 or more, or if total assets is 500,000 or more. File 990 instead of file 99EZ. So here, if your gross receipt, and the gross receipt is not, it includes all of your receipts, not including your deductions or not including your expenses. Gross receipt of 200 or more, you have to file 990. But if you have less than 200, then you file this form, 99 easy. It is a simpler form, it is shorter, and there's less information that they ask of you. So look at your income, see how much you have for your taxable year. Now, this is very important when you're, let's say, for example, you're planning for educational conferences or gala or educational events or whatever events you have. You have you have reservations and all those kinds of things. So make sure that you have an accurate recording of how much money you're getting. Because if your gross it says gross receipt is more than 200, then you file the long form, Form 990. And if it's less than that, it's 99 easy. And even less than that, you'll have the short form, which is 990N. Okay, so pay attention to this. It will tell you when you go online which form you need to file. Next slide. So you may have you may have your application 1030 pending. So unless you file for the exception from requirement to file an annual return, your 990 filing begin as soon as you're formed. So as soon as you have your articles of incorporation, as soon as you're formed in your state, you start being required to have your Form 990. And those exceptions are really for organizations that have annual income of 5,000 and below. So organizations that have income that are 5,000 and below, they are not necessarily required to file, but they still have to send notice to IRS that they are a nonprofit organization. And this is just to tell the IRS that you have less than 5,000 and you're giving them notice, because you might need that document that you are tax exempt when you're doing fundraising. So you still have to do it, but it's just an like a postcard to give notice to the government. So while Form 1023 is pending, you need to complete your Form 990 and just mark application pending on the back, and it will tell you where to fill that up. There's an application pending for your 1023. Okay, next slide. So how do you jeopardize your 501c6 exemption? We mentioned earlier about the restrictions. Organization cease to have its purpose in promoting the common business interest or persons engaged in line of business. For example, you are a 501c6 and you want to do fundraising, and you wanted to do fundraising by selling some goods to like say you wanted to sell some goods to fundraise. Now you wanted to make sure that that's not all you do. You want to do this on a limited basis. You wanted to have those on a very limited basis, but you don't want to do it that it overcomes your purpose in your organization. So if you no longer operate for the purpose of promoting the business interests of your organization, then that would jeopardize your 501c3 exemption. Private benefit or inurement, an organization's net earnings may not inure to the benefit of its individual members. And I wanted to include this because some of you may have scholarships. Now, this scholarship is one of the most common benefits that we give to our members. Now, when you're offering scholarships, make sure that you don't benefit one individual by sending checks to an individual scholar, because that's giving private benefit to an individual. That's an example of inurement or giving private benefit to an individual, because you're sending or you're giving check to an individual. When you have scholars, you need to make sure that you send the check to the school or to the organization that the individual is enrolled with. Make sure that it goes to the school or whatever is sponsoring the scholarship, because then it goes to an organization, not to an individual. Excessive political campaign and lobbying. Now, 501c6 is allowed to do lobbying and political campaign, but not excessive. It should not overpower your purpose in protecting the interests of the members or the let's say, for example, the interest of the nursing profession. So there may be some lobbying, but not excessive. Unrelated business activities. As I mentioned earlier, unrelated business activities. For example, you have a conference and you have booths and organizations. Now you wanted to sell books of one of your members. So you wanted to sell to fundraise. Now, if you sell books of your members and the fund goes to the individual author or the individual member of then you're benefiting it as a private benefit, because you're selling the book for the private benefit of the owners of those books. So you have to really be very careful when you're doing it for individual members versus for the entire organization. Performing particular services for individual persons. Like say, for example, now you are an organization and particular service, for example, now you have a nursing services that provides home care. Now that's performing particular service to individual persons. You don't want to do that because that's not your intent as an organization. Failure to file annual return, as I mentioned earlier. So all of these things would jeopardize. So be very careful and be very cautious when you are engaging in these kinds of activities. Next slide. So we've mentioned about the 501c3 prohibitions. You cannot participate in political campaigns for candidates for the local, state, or federal government. And the same thing, no private benefit or inurement. Cannot operate for the primary purpose of conducting a trade or business because you're really a charitable organization. You cannot engage in activities that are illegal and must limit legislative activities. And I wanted to cite this as an example. Say, for example, there is there's a bill that organization wanted to promote. What you cannot do is to write to your congressman or senator to promote the bill or to sign for the bill or to vote for the bill, because that is affecting legislation. What you may do is to use this as an educational to educate the public. Like, say, for example, if you wanted to promote a bill that increases the salary of APNs, now you cannot now go to your senators or congressmen to say, can you vote for the bill to increase the salary of APNs? What you could do is to educate the public on what's the important role of APNs, what is the benefit to the public, how could we reduce diseases and healthcare. So those are examples of of educating the public. For example, what are the benefits of immunizations? So you can affect legislation by educating the public, but not to influence legislation by writing to your congressman or sending your appeal for the congressman or senators to vote for a certain bill. Those are two distinct activities. Next slide. So this is an example of when you're filling up your 1023. There's a specific question on how you affect the legislation. So in your 1023 application, there's a section there which is the part 8 of the application. It says, do you attempt to influence legislation? And these are all for political campaigning. And of course, as a 501c3, you would say no. Do you have you made or making an election to have your legislative activities measured by expenditures? Then of course you said no, because when you are filling up your 1023, it will require you to list down your expenditures, and it will categorize the expenses that you have for your organization. So you have to be very careful when you fill this up. When you answer this no, you'll automatically be denied of your 501c3 application. Then you have to apply for another application. Maybe you may want to be a 501c6 instead of 501c3. So you have to make sure that you're clear with your activities as an organization when you're applying for tax exemption. Next slide. Okay, common causes for revocation of tax exempt. And I think this is probably the fifth slide that because I wanted to emphasize that you don't want your tax exempt status to be revoked. So failure to file annual tax reform for 3 years, unrelated business income, private benefit of annulment, and activities no longer in alignment with tax exempt status. Like, say, for example, you are a 501c3, a charitable organization, and you no longer are doing a lot of those charitable organizations, and instead you are doing more of, let's say, educating the nursing profession or lobbying, all those things. So you're no longer in alignment with your tax exempt status. And on the other side, let's say, for example, you're 501c6, and your main intent is supposed to advance the nursing profession. Now you're doing a lot of public charity, you're doing a lot of missions. It's very common, many of our chapters are doing a lot of missions to the Philippines or wherever. But if you're 501c6, you can do some missions, but it should not overpower your activities as an organization, because you can still do it, but it should not be extensive, substantial. And when the IRS looks at substantial, they look at your expenses. And substantial, they see that, let's say, 80% of your activities is considered substantial. So if your activities are no longer in alignment with your tax exemption status, they will look at your annual report and look at your expenses and look at your activities, and you could be audited. And then you could lose your tax exempt status. And first, political campaign for and against a candidate. So those are the main reasons for revocation. But number one is really not filing the income tax return for 3 years. We may have questions on this later on, but let's move on. So when your organization is revoked, this is what you will get. IRS letter of revocation. It will state in bold letters, your organization's tax exempt status was automatically revoked. And further, it would say, because you haven't filed for 3 consecutive years, your organization's tax exempt status was automatically revoked by law, effective whatever day, December 2024, or whatever the day that they have identified you haven't filed. Your organization is no longer exempt. If your organization was eligible to receive tax-deductible contributions, it's no longer permitted to do so. Your organization's name was added to our list of organizations that are no longer tax exempt. So this is very critical, because when donors want to deduct their donation to a particular organization, and your organization's name is in the list, it's actually publication 78. Is in the list of non-exempt. They can deduct their contributions to the organization. They will be denied by the IRS deducting their contributions. So now, because your organization is no longer tax exempt, you are required to file the income tax return 1120, which is the corporation income tax return for a nonprofit, for all those that are nonprofit. So you will be taxed with all of the revenue that you receive for your organization. So you'll be taxed with whatever revenue you have at the end of your fiscal year. And it will be the same as filing as an individual taxpayer. When we pay our own taxes, they have all our income, and then we pay whatever tax is required depending on our income. So you will be required to do that. However, it's not really it's not all bad news, because you can file for reinstatement. Next slide, Len. So the effect of losing your tax exempt, again, this is a repeat of what I just said. Your tax exempt is automatically revoked and no longer exempt from federal tax. Form 1120 for corporate income tax, and it will be due 15th of the third month after the end of the organization's tax year. 15th day after 3 months. So after 3 months, you're required to file your Form 1120, and an organization is revoked. I mentioned, if you want to check, and for those of you who may not know, you better check. You go to publication 78 of IRS. You have to check to see whether or not you still have a tax exempt in progress. Because don't be surprised, let's say you are a new president, or a new organization, or a new administration, and you're wondering whether or not your chapter taxes is still exempt. Go to publication 78, because it is a cumulative list of tax exempt organization. And this is not just true for 501c3, 501c6. This is any organization that are not tax exempt. Remember, I mentioned earlier that the CO1C has 27 tax exempt organizations. So if you have one of those tax exempt 501c organizations, go to publication 78 and check your chapters if they're still tax exempt. If they're in this list, if they're not in the tax exempt, that means that your organization is revoked. revoked, is not eligible to receive and will be removed from the cumulative of tax exempt. So I was very surprised because when our President Marlon Saria mentioned in one of our meetings, he said that there are several of our chapters have revoked 501c3. And you wanted to make sure that when you take over your organization, to make sure that your name is in publication 78. And if not, then there's a remedy to reinstate your tax exempt. Next slide. So reinstatement. So if your tax exempt is revoked for failure to file, you still need to file 1023, and it's almost like the same as filing a new. It's almost filing a new tax exempt application, but now you have to include Schedule E or Schedule Easy, depending on your income, and there's a user fee. So you may apply for reinstatement by filing again for Form 1023, and the form is the same as when you're filing for the first time, but includes a Schedule E. And I'll show you that in a little while. Schedule E will identify how much fee you will have and when you can reinstate your tax exempt. So if your application is approved, your date of reinstatement will be the filing date of the application. So when you file your 1023, your filing date will be when you file for reinstatement, Schedule E. So don't postpone, because if you file more than 15 months after your application is revoked, you'll have to have you have to submit a reasonable cost while you fail to submit on the next 15 months. So what they're saying is that, yeah, your tax exempt was revoked, but you can still file for reinstatement, but you file within 15 months of revocation. You have filed 15 months after revocation, then if there's due cost, then you will be reinstated based on your application, based on what you include in Schedule E. Next thing. So the Form 23 Schedule E, like see here, select 4 if you're eligible to file Form 99EZ, which is a very short form. So this time, first time, and this is your first time to do it, and you're submitting it within 15 months. So the more that you submit your reinstatement, the less work that you need to do. And in that form, it will tell you whether or not it was intentional. Of course, you'd say it was not intentional. So Section 4 of Schedule 3 will be, if it's your first time to be revoked, and you are filing within 15 months, and your non-filing was not intentional. Next slide. So again, Section 5, if you were revoked more than twice, you're submitting this obligator and not 15 months. So then Schedule C will ask you whether or not you were revoked twice. So every year, you could receive this letter of revocation. And if you were revoked twice, then you have to indicate that in Schedule E. Now it will say, you see the last bullet here, describe how you exercise ordinary business care of prudence in determining and attempting to comply with filing requirements in at least one of the 3 years of revocation. Include detailed explanation of the facts and circumstances that led to the failure, and discovery of the failure and steps taken that it will not happen again. So what it's telling is that, okay, you're revoked, so tell us why. So you might say, you took over as a new president and you did not know that the past administration, and you cannot locate, whatever reason, but be honest. The reason why you were not able to file it within 15 months, and in good faith, you are taking these measures to prevent it from from happening again. Next slide. And so on. It's scheduled again after 15 months. If you did not reapply, then you will have more. Describe how you exercise ordinary business care and prudence and your filing requirements in each of the 3 years of revocation. Detailed explanation of the facts and circumstances that led to the failure, discovery, and steps you have taken to mitigate this. So it's not an end of the world if your tax exempt is revoked. There are remedies to remedy them, but you still have to file for reinstatement and inform the IRS why you have taken it. And maybe in your application you say, oh, for this not to happen again, we have developed a policy and procedure for moving from one administration to the other to require that our file form 990 was, whatever 990 was submitted by the previous administration. So inform the IRS you are now doing so that it will not happen again. Because if it will happen again, you'll be revoked for the second term, and there will come a time where you will no longer be able to be reinstated. They'll automatically just not allow you to be reinstated. And now you'll have to apply for a new application as a new organization. You'll start from all over again. You have to submit your articles of incorporation again as if you're a new organization. So you don't want to ignore a communication that you get from IRS, because there are two things that will happen. It will not be for the benefit of your organization, it will not be benefit of the donors, and it will not be for the benefit of your members. So make sure that you pay attention with the communication that you get from the IRS. Next slide. So you can request an earlier date of reinstatement, and that's again another section of E. Say for example, your tax exempt was revoked, and you wanted the tax exempt to be on the date that you were formed as an organization. That's when you were formed. Because let's say you're waiting for a grant, and you don't want to miss that grant, so you could request an early date of reinstatement. Or you have a donor that wanted to donate to your organization, and you cannot get this donation until you have tax exempt. Then you could have an earlier date of reinstatement. Just tell the IRS. So you could file for reinstatement even before the 15 months of window. Now, there are some organizations that maybe you have a scholarship program, and there are some donors who wanted to apply for to make donations to your scholarship program. Now, they cannot make donations and then have their donations be deducted until you're 501c3. So you can request the IRS to say, would like to request for earlier date of reinstatement because, we are waiting for a grant and all those things. So, IRS is not unreasonable, as long as you are asking for reinstatement for a good reason, and you have good faith in wanting those reinstatement. Next slide. So I mentioned to you earlier retroactive, the same thing as having a retroactive reinstatement at the time of your forming as an organization. So certified requirements described in retroactive within 15 months. Except reasonable cause. So you'll say your reasonable cost of statement, and you could let them know why you wanted a retroactive. Retroactive reinstatement will be a reinstatement on the date of forming your organization, or retroactive on the date of filing your reinstatement. So you don't have to wait until they approve it. You want it retroactive to an earlier date. Next slide. So I think that we went through it very quickly, but I really want to spend more time with questions and answers. I know we have spent an hour for giving you all those basic informations. There are more, but I just summarize the important things about the tax exemptions. We discuss about basic principles of authority. What does tax exempt mean? Which means that you're tax exempt from federal income tax. 501c3 organizations are those for charitable organizations. We differentiated between 501c3 and 501c6. 501c3 meaning for the charitable organizations, and 501c6 for business leagues such as a professional organization. How to apply for tax exempt, maintaining tax exempt, and revocation. So lesson learned is that as soon as you form your organization, file for your tax exempt within 27 months, and if your tax exempt revoked, file your reinstatement within 15 months. Then you'll be okay. So this is the fun part. We're ready for question and answer. And next slide, Len.
Okay.
Next slide. So all of these are from the IRS publication 557. It is very lengthy. It's probably an inch thick. I pulled out the necessary information from IRS publication 557. And instructions for the 1023, they're all in irs.gov. Everything that I've mentioned to you are in irs.gov. Now, I mentioned about US publication 78 is a cumulative list of tax-exempt organizations. You want to see your name there in that list. And for the state-specific information about your tax exemptions, you go to your state.gov. It's usually like, say, for example, Massachusetts.ma.gov. So go to your state to see what are your requirements for fundraising. Are you tax exempt? Do you need a certificate? You could find those in your website. Okay, so questions? I think I will just go by whatever the
Let me
proctors
stop
are with the
sharing.
questions who have monitored. Next
Let me
slide.
stop sharing now. Let this I can see the raised hands.
Yes, yeah, you could
Okay.
stop sharing.
Okay.
And it's up to you who to call, who
Okay.
will ask the first question, and you
Okay.
could read.
I think I have Marianne Neely helping me with the chat room, but let me go to Elisa. Elisa Nguyen was the first one I saw with raised hands. So
Thank-
Elisa.
Good morning or good afternoon now in California. So thank you so much for this forum. It's been really, really insightful. My question is so I belong to PNA Bay Area, our newest chapter for PNAA, and we do have 501c3 and we are now incorporated. The question I have about the 501c3 is when we applied and we received the letter, we were categorized by our IRS as private foundation instead of public charities. And we are intent. So they have totally different intent and totally different, I guess, filing for taxes at the end. But I think my question is how easy it is to amend the intent from private foundation to public charity to
You
IRS.
could you could file that form to the IRS. Go to 1023 again. There is a Schedule E, or I forgot. The Schedule E is really for reinstatement. But you could amend from foundation to a public charity. When you receive your letter of determination, there is a number. There is a
Mhm.
number there. I showed you the form that you receive when you get your letter of determination. And of course, it would tell you whether or not you were a public charity or a foundation. It would identify you whether or not you're 509 and 501c3. There's a number there that you can call. You could call directly because you wanted to go specifically to the letter of the determination that you received. Call them.
Okay.
And you could request, and they will send you the form, or maybe they will just ask you to write a letter of amendment. So they
Okay.
will give you specific directions on how to amend your foundation to a public charity, because the way that you operate as a foundation and a public charity will be different. And the report
Correct.
that and the form that you use to report your forms are different from a foundation to public charity, from public charity. So go back to the letter of determination that you received, and you could call the person exactly who sent you that form. There's a section there that tells you where's that? It's on the
Yeah,
right side.
I'm looking at the letter right now. It has the name of the person to
Yes.
contact. I think my warning for the folks that are applying for 501c3 is to make sure you look at your 509A and how you're filling that out, because
Yes.
how we filled it out determine that we are private foundation instead of public charity. So 509A is where you really need to look at and how you're
Yes.
filling that out, because it will determine whether you are private foundation or
Yeah.
not. So we will
Yeah,
connect with the
see, it's
person. Thank
lesson
you.
learned. Make sure that when you call them, give your employer number and all those, and there's a telephone number, and they make it very easy because person to contact. They gave you the number of the contact. So
Yeah.
you want to call them exactly because they will pull out your letter of determination and tell you exactly what you need to do. Yeah, that's
Okay.
a very good point, Elisa, right? That's a very
Yes.
good point because when you're filing those forms, make sure that you pay attention to those specific terms. Because, like I said, 501c3 are two different subcategories. And
Yep.
if you file the wrong one, then you will need to use a different form for filing your tax return.
Correct. It's more stringent to file the tax return as a public foundation than.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we'll amend it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you for the question. Next
Thank
question.
you. Marianne, do you have anything from the chat box? And then I'll ask Ronnie next.
Elena? Yeah,
yes.
this is Carol. I can read the question on the chat box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from
Okay, good.
Dr. Alicia Tulio. If we are already a 501c6 but want to convert into a 501c3, is it better to just submit a 1023 and get a new designation rather than convert?
Well, you need to because when you're converting, you need to file your articles of you need to see this is the thing that makes it difficult. When you're converting from one designation to the other, they look at your articles of incorporation. If you wanted to convert, you have to start in amending your articles of incorporation because the IRS will go by your articles of incorporation to determine what your tax exempt status is. So go back and you have to go back to the Secretary of State. You file an amendment and your Secretary of State will amend your articles of incorporation. Then you submit that as an amendment and filing 1023. You will have to submit it again because now you have changed your articles of incorporation and bylaws as a different type of organization. See that's why you have to be very careful when you're filing because they go by your articles of incorporation. They go by what's written there as your purpose. And whatever your purpose is, they go by the letter that they see in your document.
Can I say something?
Hold on. Follow up on that answer, Dr. Hermosa. So in the same token, like Elisa had asked you about amending their mission for their 501c3. So should they go back to a different article of incorporation too?
They have to.
Oh,
They have to because
okay.
the IRS determines your purpose and they give your exemption based on your articles of incorporation. So
Oh, okay.
and
Okay,
it's easy to amend. You know, your articles of incorporation is not permanent. It's not a lifetime permanent. You could amend because your purpose have changed. So there's a website in your state that tells you amending your articles of incorporation. So you submit that and you submit it to the IRS in terms of changing or switching your incorporation. It's not very hard because you could do
Your
all of this
tax
you could do
exempt, yeah.
online. All of this you can do online, but
Okay.
you just have to have the proper document. Like I said,
Okay.
you know,
All right. I think I have Jay. Jay raised his hand, and then next will be Chris Escarilla. Jay.
Hi, Elena, can you hear me?
Jay La Rosa? I think you're probably muted. Oh, let's go to Chris
Let's
then.
go
if
next.
Ready.
We'll go back to Jay. We'll go back to
Yeah.
you, Jay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Dr. Mosa, for doing this for us. I have one question, and the missions that we're all doing in the Philippines using the funds donated from the US, are they acceptable to the IRS? Because as you mentioned, these donors will use the donation as tax deductible when they file taxes.
So-
Are this
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, we have questions about that. Now, when donors do tax deductible donations to foreign countries, they have to have the accepting donor must have a 501c3 category as tax exempt. Now, there are some categories in the Philippines that are also 501c3 based on U.S. From U.S. Designations. Now, say for example, let me give you an example. The American Red Cross, for example, they are 501c3 in the US, but they also have offices and they also have units in other countries that are under their umbrella. So the mother organization in the US is 501c3, but it's extended to international charitable organizations. For example, Doctors Without
Borders. Borders.
Doctors Without Borders, for example. Doctors Without Borders are 501c3 in the US, but they also have specific tax exempt offices in the foreign countries. So those are the organizations where donors can have their donations deducted. However, for private donations, if they're not within the US 501c3 categories, they cannot deduct their donations.
Wow.
IRS will not accept their donations if they are not within an umbrella of a US 501c3 tax designation. Now, there are schools in the Philippines too that may have this designation. It really depends on the category. Like say, for example, now you're doing a medical mission in well, I'll give my example as Baguio City. You do a medical mission in Baguio City, and you're doing medical mission in one of the mountains, Ifugao Mountain province. Now, your donation to those to that to the your donation to that, because it's a foreign country. Now the donors cannot deduct it from their income because it's not considered as a 501c3 accepted donation. Now, the IRS is very clear. Donation can be made to a 501c3 or whatever. If it's a 501c6, it's deduction as a business expense, depending on your designation is. They're very clear that they have to be U.S. authorized for public charities.
must be utilized in the US? Thank you so much for clarifying that, Dr.
Wow.
Hermosa.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it as well.
I
I
hope
think
this
we're
clarifies.
all
Yeah, I know this is a very common question. Some private citizens, they send scholars to their school. No, they send scholars, but they give the money to the individual. They send the money to the person. Now, if you give the money to the person, to the scholar itself, you are giving private enormous to an individual versus donating it to, let's say, University of the Philippines or whatever school, because they are considered as a school or an organization that may receive those funds. So you have to be very careful when you're sending money overseas, because they are very clear with the use of scholarship and use of money given to individual persons.
Tita Elena, I
Yeah.
have more questions in the chat. This is Ron Bunnell, a member of the committee. I am very much appreciative of this time, and shout out to the 31 people who are here. So we have a question from Lourdes DePirio from San Diego. Per PNA San Diego's incorporation status, board of director is required. Can we change the leadership structure? No board of director, every office what's this? Sorry. Every office elected or appointed will be part of the decision process.
So you put,
Lord,
public, charitable, no, not charitable, but non-profit organizations are governed by the state. Okay, they're governed by the state. And the way that you have your governance depends on how you structure it based in your bylaws or your articles of incorporation. Now, you could change it. It really has to be decided by your leadership. What you might want to do is go back to the leadership and change your organizational structure, because you know the articles of incorporation bylaws, they should not really be permanent if it doesn't apply anymore to the current situation. You need to change it. And you need to have like the decision-making body of your organization and file for, vote for change of organization. Now, I'm saying this not as a legal advice, but as a something to think about. Now, go back to your state, your statute. If it's in California, it's california.gov. Look at the sections on governance. If remember, we have the authority, the hierarchy of authority. What starts with, I don't want to go back to that. I know that the hierarchy of organizations, you start with the US Constitution, you have the federal and law, and then you have the state law over and articles of incorporation, all those. Go back to your state.gov and look for provisions of governance. Because if there's a governance there that you feel that maybe it's an abuse of power, maybe it's not it's not benefiting the public because it's your 501c3, then go back to that. And there are ways to really look at those and change your governance if it's not benefiting your mission. If it's not benefiting your mission anymore, if things have changed, if you're 501c3, you want to benefit the public, and you wanted to change the governance because it's no longer within the mission of your organization, then you have to point this out. But it has to be a decision making that's done by the leadership of your chapter. No one can dictate your way of governance except your own chapter, because you are a state governed by the statute or your articles or your bylaws. So
thank you very much, Dr.
that has to be
Valdez.
looked at.
Thank you, Ronnie, for doing that. I think let's go to Jay. Let's go back and forth. Jay has his hand raised.
All
Jay?
right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair De Jesus. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. And thank you, Dr. Hermosa, for this great presentation. My question is going back again to the activities of the chapter, and it might have something to do with the articles of incorporation. The statement of purpose was for education and professional purposes, and then once approved by the letter of determination, it says charitable. It's a charitable organization. There are different. I think there might have some misinterpretation of that charitable portion, and then now the activities of the chapter are more geared towards what may be deemed as charitable versus now to what it should be for education and professional purposes. Do you have any resources or guidelines that you can refer the chapters to? So
Yes,
that
you know what? Go back.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked that. Go back to your letter of determination. Go back to your letter of determination. I don't know when it was. Go back to your letter of determination and see the letter of determination and what it says. Because if there's a discrepancy between your articles of incorporation and your letter of determination, then that can be corrected. So look at those because they have to be congruent. Like I said, IRS depends on your article of incorporation, what your purpose is. If there's discrepancy, go back to that and call the number. They said we'd like to amend or correct this discrepancy and go from there. because
Sure.
obviously, maybe it was mislooked or misread or whatever, but you can correct it now. There's a way of correcting it to make sure that you are within the mission that you wanted to accomplish as an organization, which is in your articles of incorporation.
Oh, okay. So we can go back to that letter, but it's kind of vague as it's stated on the letter. It says that we are a charitable organization, and then when you go back to the articles of incorporation, it says that we are for education and
See,
professional.
that's why you need to have that clarified by going to the number or going back to the customer service and all those things. You go back to that and clarify with them. Because
Thank you.
there's a way correcting it. If it's not if it's not congruent, then correct it. It has to be. They have to be. Like I said, they have to be congruent. I think we're running short of time. And next.
I know,
Alright.
Ronnie.
Okay,
Ronnie,
so
quickly,
we
chat
have
room.
yeah, we still have a couple of questions, but let me go ahead with Maria Herrera as a 501c3. This is PNAG
KC.
KC. When we have Membership Appreciation Day and we use some of our funds to cover food, we need to include it as a membership drive. I'm getting, is that allowable activity to use funds in their membership drive used for food to cover their appreciation? Is that an
Yeah,
expense
that's acceptable.
covered?
You could include that in your expenses. Include
Okay,
that in your expenses. When you categorize, when you submit your form, your financial form, make sure that you categorize your expenses as membership fee versus funds that you have for your membership drive. Because offering food for membership drive is a part of is a part of expenses. So you can
right.
include
That's
that.
program expenses,
Yeah.
Attorney Leticia. Okay, next question. This is, I think, already been answered. Can we still do medical mission in the Philippines and donate Gawat Kalinga organization as a 501c3 organization? I think Attorney Leticia already covered this. You have to make sure that that organization, the Philippines, also has been recognized by a cover organization in the U.S. The next question, our from Emma Rosales from PNAAZ, Arizona. Our organization has both 501c6 and 501c3. How do we separate its fund? How do we separate its fundraising? The missions are the same.
You both have the same.
No, the missions are not the same. 501c3 is to benefit the members.
Double, yeah.
501c6, no, 501c6 is for the benefit of the members. 501c3 is for the
It's
benefit of the
charitable,
public. You have to separate out your financial document because you cannot you cannot intermingle your funds for 501c3 and 501c6. You cannot have both. You have to have separate documents for 501c6 because when you file your when you file your form 990, there are two different forms when you file for your annual report. For your 990, there are two different reports if you are if you are 501c3 and 501c6. So you make sure that you don't
Drink some water
intermingle.
first.
I'm sorry.
Get some
It's my
water.
bronchitis.
Bless your heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
There was a raised
Attorney
hand
Call me
here
again.
from Rose.
You know, I might be answering all these questions in this webinar, but if your chapter are not clear with many of what I've mentioned, or you're still not clear to decide, call me. We could have a
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
we could have a webinar. We could have a Zoom meeting so that
I love
we
it.
could answer it
Yes,
specifically to your chapter.
Perfect.
Yes,
You are
yes.
amazing.
And I've
Thank
done
you
those, so
much.
let's do it. So
Or you know
Thank you,
what?
thank
We
you
can
so
arrange it.
probably
I'm sure.
follow up with just question and answer next time.
Or
Related to
it's
this,
it's
yeah.
hard to do it because everybody's
different,
cases
yes.
are so different.
So we
So
can
you
invite you.
True.
you could coordinate with Elena de Jesus who is the sponsor of this program,
Perfect.
and I'm sorry, I can't, my voice is really giving me, and she could coordinate chapter chapter
Zoom, yeah.
webinar or
Yes,
chapter
perfect.
Zoom, that we could do it, and I could spend an hour just with your chapter versus having an overall
I love it. Thank you so
question
much.
and answer. So I'm open as long as we could coordinate the time, and
Okay,
maybe Elena can coordinate that, and we could
okay,
do it as a follow up for
Yes.
sponsored by the bylaws committee.
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your participation. But I want to just address Rose. Rose had her hands raised earlier. Are you still there, Rose? I guess not. Not anymore.
Okay, Tita Ellen, I'm gonna continue.
Okay,
It's
go ahead.
it's 12:30 p.m. here in California, probably 3:30 in East Coast. Thank you very much for this is from Erlinda. Thank you for the very informative education session. We just received our 501c3 designation. My question, do we need to create a separate chapter foundation bylaws?
If you have a 501c3 organization and you wanted to create a foundation, there are two separate entities. So you have, because your operation as a foundation is different from operating as a 501c3. There are two, the government would look at a foundation and a 501c3 organization as two separate entities. So you have your own, because it's clear to look at them separately, because there are different forms, there are different requirements for a foundation. There are different rules and responsibilities for a foundation. They have a stricter rules for a foundation versus the chapter itself. So you need to have a separate. You will need to have a separate. Everything is separate. Okay, so those are two entities that are looked at separately. So don't use the same thing, because you'll be denied, or they will be confused. Why are you applying? You already have this. IRS is very specific at following their directions and rules.
Thank you, Attorney Hermosa. There is another question from Maria Vicky Herrera. Just to clarify, any of our volunteer activities or person can be benefited.
No,
Not so
no
sure.
person can benefit.
No person can benefit,
Benefit.
can be,
For
can
example, like
benefit.
we have service program for another nonprofit organization. As long as it is just a volunteer service, whatever we spend, it is not benefiting any individual or benefiting like in honor of a person outside the organization. That is clear, right? It should not be attributed to benefit anybody or any member or any other person. It should be a straightforward volunteer service or whatever, food or whatever, in collaboration with another agency, correct?
Well, yeah, see, that's a very big question. Now, if you have, if you have, it depends on the way that you structured your organization. Now, let's say, for example, I'm thinking out loud now. Let's say, for example, you have in your organization, volunteers are volunteers. They are non-paid members of your organization. So it's voluntary. They give their services. They donate their services. They donate their time. So those are voluntary. But there are situations where you may have some services because you need the service of that particular individual to reimburse their professional services. Let's say, for example, you have an accountant within your organization. Now, your accountant, you need to pay for services, but that that's not necessarily compensation as a member of your organization. It's different. You have to be clear on what you mean by voluntary service, because the IRS would say you cannot inure for the personal benefit of its member or officers. So it depends on what context you have.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
I'd
you.
like to piggyback that too. I think, when you're providing food for your members and your volunteers, that's a part of the operating budget of your organization. And that's not quite like an enormous, like you're giving it to them, as a scholarship. But I'd like to piggyback a question about enormement also, which I think you said in your slide, Attorney Hermosa, that with the enormement, you can specifically give it to a member benefit. But if the scholarship recipient is not a member, can you give the scholarship directly to that person?
No, that's still the same. That's still benefiting a private individual. It doesn't matter
Oh, okay.
whether
All
they're
right. Just
members
wanted.
or anyone, but still benefiting an individual. They
Oh,
may or may
okay.
not be
Just
a
wanted
member.
to make sure that there is no distinction, member or non-member. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether they're members or not. It says any individual,
Okay.
Cannot.
regardless of their membership.
Okay.
Okay, reading
Thank
through
you for
the
that
comments.
clarification.
We hired a lawyer. This is from Gildina Irvine. We hired a lawyer friend to help us file our 501c3 organization for a small fee. It's a lot easier and we get approved without any questions few years ago. Since then, we just file every year to maintain our 501c3 organization. Kudos to you.
Yeah, good.
Miss Irvine,
Good.
good.
That's
We have another question. Can we accept scholarship donation to fund our scholarship and recipient is a foundation requested to benefit from the donor?
We accept the
The
scholarship
foundation can
donation.
get the donors.
Okay.
It's not
All right.
our foundation.
And the reception is a foundation.
It's another person's foundation, but want to donate to donate to our scholarship, but has a specific request to to benefit a certain foundation. But this foundation is outside. It's not ours.
Because it really depends. It really depends on that foundation, what their focus is, what their purpose is. Because foundations are very specific to fund a particular charity. They're very specific what they are funding. So not knowing what their specific focus or purpose or intent, I cannot address that. It's really they're very specific on what they can fund.
Okay. Thank you. Just a question that we do have some questions that I had in my mind. Thank you so much for addressing it. Thank you.
There's a
I think
comment.
I'll stop talking now. I can.
Okay.
Kawawa naman.
We're beyond our time.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's 2:38.
Dr.
Ronnie, go ahead.
Yeah, Attorney Hermosa, thank you very much. And there are some questions. I know we are getting into a lot of questions here. So as Attorney Hermosa suggested, if your chapter has a lot of questions, kindly coordinate with us, with the Bylaws
Yeah.
Committee, with your
Yes.
cover. If we can create a Zoom meeting. And there's also a question here if we can have access to the PowerPoint that Attorney Hermosa presented. Is that possible, Chairperson Tita Elena?
If it's okay with Dr. Hermosa, that's fine with me. Is
Well,
that
you know,
possible?
these are all from the from publication 557. So
Okay.
I just summarized it. You could go
Okay.
to you could go to publication 557 from the IRS. Everything is there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So,
All right. So,
Tita Elena,
yes, thank you,
I'm giving back to
Ronnie,
you.
and thank you so much, Attorney Hermosa, for this. It looks like we needed more time. Actually, you
know.
could talk forever, and we can still have questions.
You know,
for you.
if I don't have laryngitis or this bronchitis, I could talk more.
Yes, yes.
I'm not.
But,
Isn't it fair to you that
yeah,
that I'm
thank you so much for your attendance tonight, and we'll talk among ourselves and see what we can do to accommodate you more with your questions, and we'll get back to you about that. And we really do appreciate your engagement, your commitment to PNAA, and for the improvement of it and your chapters. So I guess that's goodbye for now until
Yeah,
the
can I
next.
say? Yeah, can I say
Oh, go
that?
ahead.
Can I say the last comment? I would like to. I know I'll be. I'd like to commend and thank the Bylaws Committee because they really are committed to clarify and answer questions, not just about bylaws. Because, you know, bylaws is very straightforward. There are very specific things, but there are more into it. Like today, we spoke about tax exempt, and that's beyond that's beyond bylaws. So make sure, for those of you who are here, I'm so glad with all this participation, very engaged. Coordinate with Elena, because I'm like I said, I'm s- I'm sincere when I said I could have a Zoom meeting with you that have questions about your chapters, about I know about tax exempt, but there are issues that come up that maybe next time when we do a webinar, we could do something about conflict of interest. I got a lot of questions about conflict of interest, but for now, we're focusing on tax exempt status, and there's a lot of fundraising questions. But schedule a Zoom with Elena, and I'll make myself available, because it's really we could spend another 2 hours, to talk about tax exemptions and fundraising, and your requirements of 501c3 foundation, 501c3. There are a lot of specifics about foundations. That is a totally a 1 hour session about the foundation. Because there's a private foundation, there's some more specifics to foundation. So I'd like to thank Elena and her team. Is it Ronnie and all the others members? Jay,
Okay,
who else
yeah,
are the members
Marianne
of
was
the
there. Marianne Neely was there
Bylaws
earlier. Yeah.
Committee? Thank you for your engagement and your commitment to the purpose of clarifying all of these questions.
We will take a picture. So if you
Oh
can
yeah,
open
Yes.
your camera, please.
yeah.
I think Carol Robles is gonna take a picture for us. Carol, if you can
Yes.
give instruction.
Yep.
And thank you, Carol, for facilitating all this tech support and all.
Sure, no problem. Okay, we'll take a photo. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, I'm gonna go to the next page. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, we're good to go. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so
so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
Okay.
attorney.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye, and thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. I don't want to keep you, Letty. I know you're coughing